We're live, Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Oh, we
Recording in progress.
I'd like to call to order the special City Council meeting of October the 3rd, 2022. Clerk, will you please call the roll for tonight's meeting?
Councilmember Nixon,
That was a thumbs up.
Councilmember Black,
Here.
Councilmember Curtis,
Here.
Councilmember Falcone,
Here.
Councilmember Pascal,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Arnold,
Here.
Mayor Sweet.
Here. Thank you very much. This is a special meeting to receive public comments on the topic of enacting a $20 vehicle license fee to accelerate pedestrian and bicycle safety improvements. This revenue would be used to improve safety for students, families, and workers by investing in safe pedestrian and bicycle routes for getting to school, stores, and offices. This would also be used to fund a team of dedicated to tree and median maintenance across the city. The council's role this evening will be to listen and learn from our community. There will be more opportunities for our community to engage on this topic in the coming weeks. Our Deputy City Manager for External Affairs, Jim Lopez, will be facilitating this evening's meeting. And with that, I will turn it over to Deputy City Manager Lopez.
Thank you so much, Madam Mayor and Council, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's community forum on the use of the city's Transportation Benefit District. As the Mayor noted, my name is Jim Lopez. I'm the Deputy City Manager for External Affairs, and I'll be facilitating tonight's discussion. Now, I'll be turning the meeting over to the City Manager in just a minute, but before I do, I'd like to briefly walk you through tonight's agenda and how you can participate in the conversation. So we're going to bring up our slide show, and I'll take you through tonight's forum. And I do want to remind everyone, you might want to mute your monitors. Thank you so much. So tonight's agenda, we'll go over our introductions now, and we'll talk about Transportation Benefit District, this proposal. We'll give an overview of that. But most of the night is really designed to get community comments from all of you and to get subject matter expert responses to those comments. We have a good deal of time devoted to the public comment period, and we really hope to have a robust and detailed discussion about the issues. Next slide. So tonight's meeting, as you can see, the City Council is in attendance, and the Council is here to listen and to learn from all of you. The Council will be discussing this throughout the budget process. The budget comes to a conclusion at the end of this year in the month of December. And your feedback tonight will help inform the Council's decision. As the clerk noted, tonight's meeting is being recorded, so we will have a good reservoir of information from tonight. But there are other ways that you can provide feedback. You can go to the kirklandwa.gov TBD/TBD site. We like to think of everything you need to know about what the council is considering should be able to be found right on that website, and you can use that website to communicate with us. We're also having follow-up small group meetings. We'll be posting at least 2 dates for folks to come in and continue the conversation. You can text us at 425-305-1305, and you can contact the City Council directly at kirklandwa.gov/council. So various mechanisms to get us information, and thank you for that. Now, in these meetings, we continue to note that there are 3 community principles we live by, and we have not been let down. And those principles are arrive as a community, leave as a community, speak your mind and respect others, and identify common ground. And I will say, this is the time in the night where I always remind everybody that we live in the best city in America. And I know I'm often subject to hyperbole, but Money Magazine has just published and noted that they ranked us the #3 city in America. And we're going to be sending out a press release on that tomorrow. So I have a little data to back up my hyperbole. So thank you. And please let's treat let's be robust, speak our mind, but treat people with respect and always try to find common ground. So how can you participate? Well, we're going to do our best to list people on a first come, first serve basis. So you raise your hand, *9 for those on the phone. And we have a staff who are gonna list that out. Zoom helps us a lot on that, but we do have potentially people on site. We have the facility open for folks to come in who want to do a comment in person. But we do ask that you keep your comments to 2 minutes each so that we can get everybody in that would like to speak. So pretty simple. I'll be assisted with several staff members to make sure we get anyone that raises their hand the opportunity to speak. I guess we do have 2 people in the chamber, so thank you both for coming, and we'll be sure to be responsive to anyone physically on site who wants to speak. So that is the overview of tonight's agenda, and it's really my privilege to turn the event over to our city manager, Kurt Triplett, who is going to take us through the opening presentation. Kurt? And we can move to the next slide, David.
Kurt, you're muted.
We practiced that.
All right, sorry about that. So thank you, Jim. Thank you all for being here. As Jim noted, it was a great honor to be named one of the best cities by Money Magazine, but we know we can always do better. And that's one of the reasons we're here tonight, to talk about ways that we can improve our services and our projects and the safety of our community. So I have a less than 10-minute presentation to provide an overview of the Transportation Benefit District car tab proposal for those of you who are new to the topic. But as Jim mentioned, there's great detail on our webpage. There's a couple of additional web links at the bottom of this slide, and you can find everything you need to know by going to the Kirkland website. So the city of Kirkland, before we talk about a new $20 car tab proposal, I thought it'd be important to just sort of set this tone with what we currently do for street pedestrian safety funding. Now this chart is a fairly straightforward chart of ongoing monies that the city invests. There's tens of millions of dollars of capital projects that we use real estate excise tax and transportation impact fees to fund. And those projects also build bicycle lanes and sidewalks and ramps. But really, I wanted to show you that the City Council has always made a commitment to invest in ongoing street and pedestrian safety funding, and has always really tried hard to increase that amount each year. And so this is just a snapshot of the last 2 years and the next 2 years that are coming. And you can see there at the bottom that the sum total of what we've invested is about $4.4 million in 2021. That rises to $5.7 million this year in 2022. And the preliminary city manager's budget, which I've been developing in partnership with the council, increases that still further with $7.3 million in both 2023 and 2024. And that'll be the discussion at the council's budget process in October and November. So we invest a lot. Next slide, please. But it's still not enough. As you know, we continue to have challenges, and we're not alone in this. Every city has challenges meeting its pedestrian and bike safety infrastructure needs. And so we have sidewalks that need repair. We have places where we don't have sidewalks. We have places at crosswalks where we need to replace flags with flashing beacons. We have streets that don't have crosswalks at all. And of course, we continue to struggle with the issue of maintaining our many, many miles of medians, which is not only unsightly, but also can be a safety hazard because of the visual impacts. And so these are concerns that have been constantly raised to us by the community over the years. And the City Council in 2019, next slide, asked us to do something about some of these concerns. And they funded us to launch 2 really important projects to improve safety for pedestrians and cyclists, and particularly for those around schools. So in 2019, we began and completed the Safe Routes to School Action Plan projects. And then we also began the Active Transportation Plan project that finished in 2021. And both of these plans identified numerous new projects, not just existing projects, but new projects that were designed to make walking and bicycling around our elementary and middle schools and our business districts safer and more feasible for students, families, and workers. Next slide, please. When we completed the Safe Routes to School action plans in 2019, it had identified 40 high priority safety projects that totaled about $33 million. Next slide. The active transportation plan, which is a little bit more comprehensive, identified 105 projects in 2021, totaling about $109 million. As I mentioned, some of these projects are actually being tackled in our CIP list through things like impact fees and real estate excise tax. But as you can see from the previous slide that I showed, there's just no way with current revenues that we can make the investments needed to accomplish these new projects. Next slide, please. Before we actually get to the proposal, I think it's important to say, hey, where did these projects come from? How did we get them, right? So these projects were generated by the community and for the community. These were developed from 2019 all the way up to the end of 2021 and even into part of 2022. We engaged students, workers, residents. We had over 60 events for these two plans, many hosted by our city council. We had neighborhood picnics. We went to the schools. We had citywide events. We had surveys. We had social media. We did everything we could to bring people in and ask them what they needed and what they saw as the priority safety projects for the city. Next slide, please. And this slide just sort of summarizes all of that work over the last 2 years. We had over 2,000 individual people who showed up at events and gave us feedback. We had almost 1,300 people who gave us specific feedback on projects and safety improvements online. We had over 43,000 views of our digital media. And in addition to the specific projects themselves, one key piece of feedback we got almost everywhere was they wanted the council to act now. They saw city improvements for safety that were needed today. So city council asked staff to develop some options for them to act now. And that's one of the subjects of tonight's discussion, which is our proposal for a transportation benefit district $20 car tab. Next slide, please. So the first thing we looked at is what are the key top priority projects that can make the most immediate impact and keep most number of people safe. And we developed a list of almost $26 million worth of projects. You can see that up at the top, most of the investments at totaling $26 million. At our total current funding, which is the green slide you see in the middle, the city council set aside $800,000 a year for these types of investments. And that would add up to about $5 million over the next 6 years. So in order to find a way to fund all of these within a 6-year time frame, we considered the idea of issuing debt. If we didn't issue debt, we'd be looking at about a 30-year implementation time frame for these incredible safety projects that the community has brought to us. Next slide, please. So last slide before I get to the actual proposal. The proposal is to use the authority of a transportation benefit district. And just a high-level overview of this, which is also, again, there's much more detail on our website. A transportation benefit district is a state-authorized taxing district. It allows the city to be the transportation benefit district, which the city of Kirkland has assumed that authority. It allows a sales tax by voter approval or vehicle license fees, which are often called car tabs, by voter approval or at a smaller level by a council action as the revenue sources. Any funds from a transportation benefit district must be used for a specific set of transportation-related projects. And we are not alone in having looked at this as a tool. The transportation benefit districts are used to fund transportation projects in 113 of the 282 cities in Washington state. Next slide, please. So to the actual proposal. So the city council asked staff to develop a way to accelerate the safety projects and to improve the medians and direct response to council feedback. And so what we have brought for their consideration is to enact by council action a $20 per vehicle car tab fee, which would generate approximately $1.34 million a year. State Department of Licensing estimates there are 67,000 vehicles in Kirkland, and that generates the $1.34 million. $1 million of this would be used to pay debt service on a $20 million approximately general obligation bond, which combined with the existing revenue sources would fully pay for those projects, the 45 highest projects. And that bond would be used to plan, design, and construct the projects from both the Safe Routes to School plan and the 2022 Active Transportation Plan. The remaining $340,000 a year would be used to hire a dedicated tree and medians team in our Streets and Grounds department. Now, this would be in addition to existing staff who already provide the service, but it would be a focus team that would deal with some of the top complaints that we get about trees blocking views, trees that are dangerous or aging, or medians that need to be improved, or medians that are also blocking views. So it'd be a dedicated tree team in addition to our existing level of service. Next slide, please. The bonds themselves will be invested primarily in new sidewalks. particularly sidewalk gaps, and especially around elementary and middle schools, as well as crosswalk enhancements, such as flashing beacons and bicycle lanes, and then sidewalks and ramps for ADA accessible ramps. Next slide, please. The picture you see here on your left is a little bit busy, but it shows where in blue where existing sidewalks are, and it shows in red where there's still sidewalks to be completed. And this was one of the starting points for developing a project list with the community. The map you see on my right, projects funded with the Transportation Benefit District, shows all of the sidewalks that would be invested in as part of this Transportation Benefit District proposal. And one of the things that was very important to the community, and certainly very important to the council, was that the projects be fairly spread across the city. And you can see there's a very nice dispersal among most of the neighborhoods in this. And in addition, all the projects actually happen to also be the top priority safety projects. So it's a very nice mix of both safety and geography. Next slide, please. On the pedestrian side, there'd be 13 new sidewalks or filling of sidewalk gaps. These are some examples of the kinds of places where we currently need sidewalks near schools, where you can see where they dead end, or they don't exist at all, or they're running into other things like rockeries. Next slide. Some of the money would be invested to sidewalk repair. We know we have some older sidewalks throughout the city that have a lot of challenges with tree roots and cracking, and those need to be fixed for safety purposes. And a lot of new wheelchair ramps needed to be added. Just as an aside, the city actually adds about 40 to 50 ramps per year with our existing programs. This would be in addition to that. Next slide, please. There would be 9 new flashing beacons, again, primarily near middle schools and elementary schools, as well as 3 new Hawk systems, which is essentially a giant flashing beacon system across major arterials. Next slide, please. On the bicycle side, you can see on my left a list of projects that are already in our capital improvement plan that are already funded. And you can see, once again, they're sort of spread throughout the city. This set of investments would complement those. And you can see on the right, the red arrows pointing to the various bicycle improvements. Again, all these projects are listed on a map that's interactive that you can go to on our website if you want more details on individual projects. Next slide. So the bicycle projects will be 50 miles of enhanced bike lanes throughout the city and will include 2 new greenway projects. Next slide. And then finally, for the Transportation Benefit District, the proposal is to fund 2 permanent dedicated maintenance staff who would be dedicated to median maintenance and trees. And again, this is in addition to, not instead of, the existing streets and grounds crew that also do this work. And this is in response, again, to direct feedback from the community of a place they really want to see the city improve. Next slide. And so that's a very high-level overview. I'm going to be joining a panel where I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have on any of these topics. City Council, all 7 of them are here tonight because they want to hear from you and your specific feedback on this proposal to use a Transportation Benefit District to accelerate these safety projects and to establish a median maintenance team. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Lopez to facilitate the rest of the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kurt, for that presentation. We tried to hit on as many of the key issues as we could in that brief presentation by leaving the majority of the evening to all of you. So please, if you'd like to, please reach out to us on Zoom if you'd like to speak tonight, and we'll do it on a first come, first served basis. As we wait, and staff, please jump in as people raise their hand and reach out. I'd like to introduce our panel. In addition to the city manager, Kurt Triplett, we have Ray Steiger, who is an engineering expert tonight. Thank you, Ray. We have Kevin Pelstring from our finance department. There may be some questions about finances and how we're funding. We have John Starber, the deputy director of public works, who could take general questions on the public works department, and Joel Funn, who is our active transportation and safer routes to school expert. He had a lot to do with the creation of those plans. So again, just raise your hand in Zoom or *9 for those on the phone, and we will promote you to listen to your question.
Yeah, Jim. So our first commenter is on Zoom, and the name Baj. And so if we can get our IT team to go ahead and promote Baj, please.
Welcome, Baj.
And after that will be Hamilton Anderson, followed by Kurt Dresner.
I think now you can hear me.
Yep.
Great, excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for letting us be here and for the presentation you gave. A couple comments I want to make and then an opinion. I like that you went out to the community for their input. At the same time, I think it's easy to ask the community for their input. It's like, sure, I'll say this and I'll say this and I'll say this. So as a result, you can get lots of comments and lots of input to add to your big pile of stuff. I like how you are focused on safety of the community. I am questioning the car tax. I think it's an easy place to resource your funds, but I'm going to suggest that it's time, it's been a long time, it's time again to start taxing bicyclists. I'm a bicyclist, so it's not like I'm against bicycling. However, I do find when I'm a pedestrian or in a car, I often have to struggle with, fight, opine with the bicyclists. And it's time that I think we all find our lanes and know what our lanes are and stay in them, whether we are pedestrians, whether we are bicyclists, and whether we are vehicles. And so I think in your thoughts, I think about taxing the bicyclists for their use, so that maybe now they'll start, we as bicyclists will become more aware of what is truly ours and what we're paying for, as opposed to thinking the entire sidewalks and roads are ours to use as we choose, since that seems to be what regulations say. Thank you.
Raj, is your thought to tax bicyclists in lieu of the cars or to do both?
I would suggest sharing the cost, not to add, but to reduce the car and add to the bicycle, add bicyclists to this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and then next up we have Hamilton Anderson, followed by Kurt Dresner.
Welcome, Hamilton.
Here we go. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Yeah, I would like to second the last person's just thanking you all for going to the community for all of these issues, and also in just, yeah, your work in making it easy for us to come to the city, come to this to the maintenance department with requests. I live in Kirkland. I'm a renter, but I also own a business, and I install, among other things, the city-funded Yard Smart gardens for homeowners. And so I bike around the city. I'm driving around the city every day, and I often see blocked stop signs or blocked bike lanes by vegetation, and I've made multiple requests, and they've all been responded to promptly, and I really want to praise the city for the infrastructure it has in place for taking care of those things, and just to encourage those actions to be continued. I would agree with a car tax. I would challenge the idea of a bike tax. I don't think that we should make it any harder for any bikers to, or make any more barriers for people to be on their bicycles. I think we need to encourage that any way we can. And then also in terms of like being able to stay in bike lanes, tying into the maintenance piece that you all talked about, I find that as a bicyclist in the city, one of the hardest things is to stay in the bike lanes. We have a lot of current construction happening. And also just in terms of maintenance and street sweeping, there's often glass from car accidents that's swept into bike lanes. There's often construction signs that are in bike lanes. So we, as a cyclist, you end up having to go into the road a lot of the time. And that would be my similar request about sidewalks is
Sure.
that the sidewalks we have, the biggest thing we can do is to maintain them well. There's many that I can see around the city that have blackberry and ivy growing onto them that we just need to do a better job of staying on top of. And maintenance is the best way we can spend our money. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Hamilton. Appreciate that. So you're talking about not just the creation of new sidewalks, but making sure we're doing our maintenance well. So that appeals to you. That part of the proposal appeals to you, medians.
Yeah, I would say just keep that money in perpetuity. You can never spend enough on maintenance.
Thank you.
Next, we have Kurt Dresner, followed by a speaker in the chambers.
Thank you. Welcome, Kurt. It does take a minute for us to promote speakers for folks in the public to know.
All right, just checking. Am I on?
Yep, you're on. Welcome.
Great. So my name is Kurt Dresner. I lived in Kirkland for about 13 years now. I get to work by biking or riding a scooter or walking. My son rides his bike to school. He's 11. He doesn't have enough money in his allowance to pay any taxes. But I have enough as a grown-up. I can afford, to give up 4 lattes at Starbucks or whatever to ensure that the folks walking and biking and getting around in sustainable ways can do so safely. Because when we talk about safer routes to school and we talk about safety for cyclists, we all know that what we're really talking about is safety from cars. We're not worried about bicyclists running into each other. We're worried about them getting hit by cars. So I don't think it's at all ridiculous that drivers should be footing the bill for these improvements to protect other people from them. And honestly, I would go even further than $20. So I'm not opposed to this at all. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a very small price to pay for the sense of safety and the sense of security that I have when I send my 11-year-old off to school on his bike, that I know that he's going to be able to get there safely and without having to worry about, getting struck by a vehicle. Two things that I would say very quickly. One is I wonder whether we need to be so insistent on making all of our sidewalks out of concrete, which is a lot more expensive than other materials. We could probably get a lot more done if we were willing to do something else like asphalt. And the second thing that I would say is that we have to be careful when it comes to medians, that we're not giving drivers an impression of too much of open space, because that just encourages them to drive even faster. So we need to be careful. I understand having nice medians is great. I think we should have nice medians, just as long as we're not, creating a big open space where people can go really quickly. Anyway, I'm not going to take any more time. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much, Kurt. You nearly nailed it at 2 minutes, just a little over. So thank you for that. And definitely hearing the building materials for the sidewalks is important from your comment. So thank you. I think we go to our person on site at City Hall.
Yes.
Hey, so
Welcome.
thank you all for being here. And I really appreciate your making the effort. My name is Ken McKenzie, and I think this is a pretty interesting situation. It looks like the fundamental problem is that we have a $20 million capital hole to fill, and we're looking for ways to do it, and a transportation benefits district offers a way to borrow the money. So I did a little digging around in the budget, and it was sort of not as deep as I'd like, but it looked to me like you could borrow $20 million for 10 years at 4% at about $2.5 million a year. And if you do it in 5 years, it's 4. If you want to do it according to the rules of the Transportation Benefit District, looks like it's $1.34 million. But let's focus on 10 years. So you write a councilmanic bond, you borrow the money, it's 0.95% of our budget. So I think it's pretty clear from anybody who's ever worked on a budget that you can always find 1%. So it looks to me like we can do this, and we can do this without a new tax. We can give people in Kirkland the safety benefits that they need, and we can avoid the regressive tax of a transportation benefit district that hits everybody the same. And some people may say, it's just a Starbucks a month. But to other people, it's a big deal. And it's not necessary because it's such a small amount of money compared to our budget. So I really recommend that we find an alternative. And we all know that there's more than 1% of trim in the budget. And there's also more than $384K to cover a median strip team. So thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Do our panel want to touch on the budget, the overall budget perspective?
Well, just a quick comment. I certainly appreciate those thoughts as the city manager. And I would certainly encourage Ken, as I know you will, to watch the rest of the budget process. The challenge is there's probably 10 or 15 other areas where we also just need just 1%. And so when you start adding up all the other places you also need to do just a little bit better, you end up with something more like needing 15 or 20% more revenue. So each of these things are policy choices and budget choices, which is why the council has the budget process. But looking at one item in isolation, it's easy to reach that conclusion. But one of the, I think, benefits of looking at the entire budget is you get to see all the other trade-offs that need to be made as well, such as human services or police or fire and so forth. But it's a fair comment and definitely one that we'll consider.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Susan Davis, who will be followed by Kyle Butler and then Brad Williamson.
We'll just remind, 2 minutes per speaker. Thank you so much.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome, Susan.
Hi, I was just calling. I've been a resident of Kirkland for 22 years, and I drive and I also ride a bike. It's just kind of great that you guys actually are having the revenue meeting tomorrow, because I actually dug into that. And you guys are thinking that the real estate excise tax is going to be going from 4.5 million to 11 million. What are you going to do with that 6.5 million? I do not support the car top tax. I will pay it, but here's what's going to happen. You guys are going to anger a lot of residents, and they're going to vote no on taxes. They're going to vote no on ballots for levies for the schools and everything else. And that's not going to be good. You guys are just, I think, doing this public meeting because you have to. I think it's going to pass, but you guys need to figure out where to spend it. For example, the PCC parcel you purchased for $14 million. You took out a loan of our city dollars. How about you sell that parcel, use that money for the sidewalks? Additionally, anything that you guys always say is for the children, kind of like Prop 1 passed in 2018 with the school resource officers. Well, now you guys decrease the school resource officers. They're not even at every middle school. And now you're using that money, $636,000 that you have in excess, which was mentioned a couple of weeks ago in the city council meeting. Now you're using it for human resources, human services. But again, you guys have the money. You spent $23 million on the connector bridge, probably even more after these change orders come in. 2.5 million was only grants. You guys have taken out 20 million of city dollars for that one bridge. I'm sorry, you guys could have easily have built these sidewalks a long time ago, but you're not, because you guys are going to take it as, oh, it's for the children. And then again, you guys have the budget. You guys have a lot of extra REIT and everything else, and you guys don't need to buy the Houghton Park and Ride for $10.5 million. Again, it's called priorities, and you guys are not making them, and I'm not going to be voting for you guys because you guys are not using our tax dollars wisely. Senior citizens, people on fixed incomes that have homes, are not able to live in Kirkland, and they have to sell and leave the only area they know. Yes, $20 car tabs isn't that much, but it's going to lead to 50. And then you guys are going to have all these other property things you're adding. Spend within your means.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you very much. So do we want to comment on the bridge or any other of the items? I don't think there was a specific question in there, but budget priorities.
Just a quick comment to make sure that people understand the purchase of the Houghton Village. So the city of Kirkland did what's called an interfund loan, and we used money from the fleet fund to do that. And the state law requires that we pay that money back for the fleet fund. So that's used to purchase things such as fire engines and aid cars and police vehicles and parks and public works vehicles and dump trucks and so forth. So we do pay a little bit of interest on that, the interest it would have earned if it was in a savings account. So there is a small cost to the interfund loan, but that property we have to do something with it that repays the loan. So whether we sell it to the private sector or we sell it to a partner who develops affordable housing on it, all of that money isn't money that could then otherwise be programmed to sidewalks. It's just an interfund loan that has to return to the fleet fund.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
next up, Jim, is Kyle Butler, followed by Brad Williamson. And then we'll go back to a member of the public who is in the council chambers.
Welcome, Kyle.
Okay, there I am. Hi, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kyle Butler. I live in Kirkland. I've been here 9 years, and I just wanted to say I drive, I bike, I bus, I walk in town. I'm supportive of this package. I do have a couple comments on it. I'm really excited about the bike lane improvements at Northeast 128th, getting across to Totem Lake, the village of Totem Lake. That's a route I take, and you really have to kind of jostle with the buses in there when you're biking. I do have a few notes. One place in my neighborhood, Helen Keller Elementary, has some, I think, a low-hanging fruit project for the sidewalk. It's JN 11 in the Safe Routes to School action plan. It'd be one in North Juanita. There aren't too many sidewalk projects in this plan in North Juanita. And then another one that is a big one for me, and my wife, she also bikes with the kids on the back of the bike and everything, is Northeast 120th. It's kind of that S curve through Juanita as you go toward Juanita Village. I don't see any bike lanes planned there. I know it's tight in the right of way and everything, but I'm sure we can get imaginative. I'd really love to see an effort to make that connection, because you are investing on either side of that, north and south. And let's see, then, the other thing too with this funding source, I just note that I don't think that bicyclists should have to pay taxes to ride their bikes on roads. I think that most bicyclists also own a car, and if they don't, then great on them. But I'd be paying for three separate car tabs with this, and I'm okay with that. So for what that's worth, I'd support that. Thanks.
Thank you, Kyle. We've taken note of those locations too, so I appreciate that.
And Jim, next up is Brad Williamson.
Good evening, Brad. You are muted, but you're up and promoted.
Okay, can everyone see me?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Welcome.
Thanks. So I'm Brad Williamson. I've lived in Kingsgate for just over 10 years now. So anyway, first comment, actually I have 3 comments. No argument that we need to provide safe roads where pedestrian, bicyclists and vehicles coexist. I mean, traffic's getting bad around here. Something needs to be done. But I do have 2 comments. Briefly looking at the map, I noticed that there is a bike path from Northeast 116th to 125th Way. That is pretty much parallel to the cross Kirkland corridor. Rather than modifying a narrow road, I just wondered, has the city considered alternatives where we've added bike lanes to streets to actually get people to use the corridor, get people off the road, get pedestrians and cyclists off the roads, and leave vehicles to vehicles? My other comment is, and I know I brought this up with council through Al Kirkland, is you've always been talking about $20. But the law in Washington says that you guys can increase this to $40. Then after a public vote, this can actually go up to $50. Are the current projections based on 20, or suddenly when all of this, let's assume you guys go through and enact the $20 car tab, very quietly you're going to say, yep, ran out of money, it's $40 without a say of the people, and in the interest of transparency, are you guys going to actually move it to $40 in 2 years' time? Anyway, that's my comment.
Thank you, Brad. So maybe we could do second first. I don't know, Kurt, if you wanted to take that one, and then Joel, or who might want to take the CKC proximity question.
Yeah, so thank you, Brad. So you asked, do the projections include any change to the $20 car tab? They don't. So everything you see in the CIP and the 6-year projections only assumes a $20 car tab. Is that something that could be debated in the future? You know, it certainly could be, but I would imagine that this current or any future council would want to have a similar process to what we're doing today. But everything that's currently in the budget only assumes a $20 car tab.
Yeah, very important point. And Joel, I think there was a question about proximity to the TKC in one of the projects.
Certainly, some of these projects do parallel the Cross Kirkland corridor. And when we're looking at these projects, we are looking at them just like a set of streets where we want a network of streets and a network of bike lanes that not everybody has, specific, like can use the CKC. And so we identified these as projects that would provide parallel connections to the CKC and provide then those link in with existing connections that can get people, east, west, and north, south, and get them where they want to go, safely and comfortably.
Thank you. Thank you, Brad. David,
Okay.
our next speaker.
Yeah, our next speaker is Faith DeBolt from the council chambers.
Good evening, Faith.
Good evening. I want to say that I support the car tabs, and I disagree with the comment that people who bike should also have to pay a car tab because, as someone else already said, we all own cars too, so we would be double taxed. And, I was kind of reflecting on why is it that something that's funding safe routes to school and active transportation, people walking and biking, coming out of a transportation benefit district, what's the benefit to transportation? And, the connection is walking and biking are modes of transportation, and they can be significant modes of transportation, and really associate it with my daughter. I've lived in Kirkland for 11 years. We've raised our daughter here. We live up on Finn Hill, and she's always walked or biked to school or carpooled. And now she's taking public transit to Juanita High School. And throughout all of these years, I've observed people who feel like they need to drive their kids to school, the unsafe conditions that are set up in these pickup and drop-off lines, all of the traffic backup that is created in these during that time. It's really stressful, and I can kind of understand why parents don't want their kids walking in that situation or biking in that situation. It's stressful, but if we can reduce the number of parents having to drop their kids off because it feels safe to let them walk and bike, then that reduces the traffic congestion around the schools, and it's just sort of this self-perpetuating improvement of the fewer cars on the road, the safer it is. And also it's just really a great way for your kids to start their school day. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk, and thank you for your support here.
Thank you very much, Faith.
Okay, Jim, next up we have Calvin, followed by Nicole McKenzie.
Welcome, Calvin.
Can you hear me?
We can. Welcome.
I'm Calvin, live in Kirkland. Just a few questions I'd love to get an answer to probably tonight or maybe in the future as this process goes forward. Number one is, we'd love to get a sense of how much this proposed project list benefits Kirkland residents versus, say, non-Kirkland residents? Like, are we funding like regional transportation projects or like infrastructure for like, that benefits people outside of Kirkland or primarily just local neighborhood stuff? I'd love to understand that. Number two is I know it's just $20 fee, but like, what's the average / median card tab fee that Kirkland residents pay today? I know it's just $20 more, but it's $20 on top of what? So I'd love to understand like that burden, and particularly those burdens, like how does this new fee burden our communities? Like, are there any particular vulnerable communities that are overly impacted by this tab fee? Like, let's understand like who are the people who pay card tabs in Kirkland. And then lastly, I think it was mentioned that there are 113 other cities that have a TBD that is raising card tab fees. I'd love to understand like what do other cities use that money for? And are we kind of in line with what those cities are doing with that money? I know Seattle, for example, very famously had their Move Seattle program, I think, where they use that TBD to buy transit service. Like, we'll understand like I would love to understand like what other things that people that cities pay for with TBDs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Calvin. So let's jump into, I don't know that we have the answer to the third one. I looked to the panel. We can certainly research that, put it up on our website. Does anybody know offhand some of our sister cities and what they're doing with the revenues from car tabs? You may have stumped us, Calvin, but we'll get back to you on that. We'll certainly do that research. How about
Jim? I
yes.
think Kurt.
Oh, Kurt.
Yeah, I certainly don't have the answer to that last question, but I would be interested in as well. So we'll definitely get that. In terms of the projects, and other members of the panel can jump in as well, but the pedestrian projects are almost exclusively focused locally. So every sidewalk obviously has a benefit to anyone who comes and visits it, but the majority of those projects are in and around schools, particularly elementary schools and middle schools, as well as some to the business district. So unless you're a visitor from out of town going to one of those locations, they're primarily local investments, not regional. There are some of the bicycle investments that could be considered regional, but again, almost all these are focused on being in the city to in the city destination investments and pedestrian and bicycle safety for Kirkland residents.
And then the marginal, we have a marginal additional cost of $20 for the car tabs. Anyone on our panel know what the car tab existing burden is? Yeah, so we could get back on that, Calvin. We could post that. It's the city's proposing this marginal incremental addition, so we can post what our understanding of the current burden is. I think there was also, yep.
Sorry,
David?
Jim. Nope. Over to you.
I think there was also a question in there about the residual benefits of some of the programs. I don't know if Calvin, if you're still on, I'm not sure if I can read my own writing about that one. Do you want to re-ask that?
I think Calvin was put back in, but there'll be opportunities and ways to contact us. So check out the homepage in the coming days or reach out to staff.
Thank you. And excellent questions. Okay, next speaker.
Yeah, so next up we have Nicole McKenzie, followed by Tanya Dempsey, and then we'll have Chris Kagan in the chambers.
Welcome, Nicole. It generally takes a minute for us to promote speakers.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can, and welcome.
Excellent, thank you. So again, my name is Nicole McKenzie. I live west of Market. My family has been here for 13 years. We drive, walk, bike, and use public transit throughout the city. And I think to reiterate something that someone earlier said, I don't think you're going to have anybody say that the projects that are proposed to be moved forward through this are in any way bad. I think everybody is supportive of the projects themselves. I think the issue is how you get there. And I want to reiterate, it's time for the city to live within its means. I heard the city manager talk about earlier about, well, every little thing, if adds up, if you take 1% here, 1% there, it's 15%. The problem is the city never takes a look and finds the 1%. Every time it's you come to us and say, we're going to add a nominal additional tax, a nominal additional fee for everything. So you want to bring in a TBD and add another car tab on top of what we already pay for the state and county. You want to, you're considering a funding proposal for a parks project or projects. There's always something. So the city is never looking at its budget going, gosh, how can we do this within the budget that we already have? And you're always proposing to us something that lives on in perpetuity. So you're talking to us about a concrete number of projects and a dedicated team that is only a very small portion of what you're proposing to raise through this car tab. But the car tab is going to live on forever. And I hear what the city manager said about not increasing it, but I've seen materials where he has specifically suggested to council that, well, gosh, we can increase the tabs in 2 years and we can increase them again. And we can even go to the citizens and get up to $100. So I'm sorry, but I'm not buying that this is necessary. And I think it's time for the city to really seriously take a hard look at its own budget and to prioritize things and get things done without adding taxes.
Thank you, Nicole. Appreciate that. So once again, it's kind of the theme of the overall burden on the budget and the demand of services, increased services of the city, and how we meet that demand. So thank you.
Okay, next we have Tanya Dempsey on Zoom, and then Chris Kagan in council chambers.
Welcome, Tanya. Just want to remind everybody, we're trying to keep speakers to 2 minutes. You all are doing great.
Hi, Jim.
Welcome.
So I don't have my camera on because I'm cooking dinner, but I just want to chime in. I really appreciate the opportunity to listen in. Just a quick question. Or statement. So COVID gave us the opportunity to really get to know our neighborhood, and we walk. So we've been walking, biking, transit. I've lived in Kirkland for 19 years. And to the person who says that the drop-off pickup at school is stressful, oh my God, yes it is. So never will do that. Hate it. My kids walk to school, and really appreciate that. I think that really led to just being in a good space to learn when she got to school. So is there data that shows areas of Kirkland where people are getting hurt? Is there data that shows that our streets are unsafe? Because from my limited perspective in Kirkland, I think this is the, as Money Magazine noted, wonderful place to live. Kind of outside of my home, I've done a ton of driving around the larger Seattle kind of Tukwila area, South King County. And I have to say, compared to those, our streets are very, very, very safe. So just if you could kind of do some, I don't know, provide me with some data that shows that it's unsafe here.
Thank you. So Joel, you might want to talk a little bit about the underlying principles of the Safe Routes to School action plan.
Yeah, so we are fortunate in Kirkland to have lower than average crash rates when we compare ourselves to other communities in Washington State. For example, communities of a similar size. We do track that data. Kirkland is not unique in that, but in seeing that a higher proportion of people who are seriously injured or fatally injured are people who are walking and biking. They're our most vulnerable users. As you can imagine, they are not protected by a vehicle. And in many cases, those folks are people who are, there's the potential that there are people who don't have a choice because they are too young or older or don't have the option to drive. So we do have that data. We track it rigorously. It's part of both the safer and part of the principle that we are working under is we are also a Vision Zero city. And so we think of this from the perspective of, we would like to someday be able to get to no fatalities and no serious injuries because no family, regardless of it's a child or a husband or a parent, should have to go through a traffic-related, that type of injury or fatality.
Thank you, Joel.
Okay, next we have Chris Kagan in the council chambers, followed by Matt N on Zoom.
Welcome, Chris.
Hey, Jim. Thank you, David, for the introduction as well. Good evening to all. I'm Chris Kagan, longtime resident in Bridle Trails and an avid cyclist. I get around most of the time by bicycle. And I'm a member of Kirkland Greenways, a group that advocates for safe and active transportation options for everyone who walks, bikes, and rolls through our city. As a cyclist, it might surprise some people to know that I support not just this TAB initiative, but the prioritization on pedestrian improvements. I think that's a good use of the funding, and I like what I see on the Safer Routes to School lists. That said, for the part of the funding that is to bicycles, I would encourage staff to focus on protected bike lanes where possible. I would prefer to see a smaller number of projects with a larger index of safety, a larger index of incremental safety being provided by that project. This city has a little bit of propensity for laying down white paint on lines and calling that bicycle improvement. And that does not encourage the average bicyclist to get out and bicycle more. I'm fine with it. I wear spandex and go 25 miles an hour, and that's fine for me, but that's not everybody. Okay, so let's really put this money where it will help the most people. Finally, I would like to mention that in the small California town where I grew up, there was bicycle licensing so that the money could be put a little bit toward the city's funding on bicycle improvements, but they did it in an innovative way. It was a voluntary program, and if you paid your small number of bucks, I think it was $5 at the time, you got a metallic sticker you could put on your bicycle to show that you had registered your bicycle with the city with its ID number, and that was to help deter theft. So if there's a way to use a voluntary program like that to raise a little incremental funding, I would approve of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. That's very interesting. A volunteer bicycle registration funding source that promotes keeping our bikes safe. Interesting.
All right, Jim, we have Matt N on Zoom, and that is the last person to indicate that they wish to speak tonight as of this time.
Well, thank you, David, and welcome, Matt.
Hi, my name is Matt. I live in Kirkland and I have a 1-year-old daughter. And I am aware that the greatest risk to her life for the next 18 years, it comes from cars. It's twice as dangerous as cancer or 4 times higher causes of death among youth than drowning or drugs. And so I'm very supportive of any measure that promotes mode shifting away from cars and toward other means of travel like biking and walking, which this proposal does. So I'm very much in favor. I like what the previous speaker said about prioritizing protected bike lanes and fewer higher fidelity projects like that. I'd also support paving and widening of the CKC to help keep these modes of transit separated from vehicles as much as possible. One comment on the prioritization mentioned previously was that the goal of spreading it around the whole city. I'd favor more prioritization towards higher density regions where they can benefit a greater number of people and provide greater benefit overall. I'd also prioritize connectivity in the bike network rather than scattered, disparate projects. And I'm not clear yet whether that was the case in selecting this set of projects.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
So thank you very much, Matt. So that took us expeditiously through the evening. We don't have any other speakers. Let me just take a quick minute to ask if there are any other speakers. I see the city manager would like to jump in.
I just thought maybe Joel could speak a little bit to the safety prioritization and the connectivity prioritization, because both of those were actually, that's a great comment, and both those were very much important in the projects that we selected. So Joel, maybe you can speak a little bit to that.
Certainly, city manager. We did, even though the projects are spread around in various neighborhoods, we certainly did take into account connectivity and making sure that we were using this money to connect up disparate sections of sidewalk. And as part of that, we did also take into account the density and the opportunity to connect to activity centers. Not every activity center, of course, is the same, but we focused on the bigger activity centers like Totem Lake, but also we see things like parks and schools and those types of places as activity centers and places that people want to get to as well. And when we looked at projects in the various neighborhoods, we really did focus on the most effective and highest priority projects in those neighborhoods that provided that connectivity and access to things like, not only parks and schools, but transit and, opportunities like retail districts and things like that.
Thank you, Joel. So we have, Kurt, we have one last request. Ken, my understanding is Ken McKenzie would like to speak again for 2 minutes. We do have the time. So Ken, we're going to allow that. And then David Wahlberg, if I could ask you to do a quick overview of the upcoming dates that folks can address the council at council chambers, talk about the budget. We have a lot going on with availability to speak on that. And then I'll close the night with some opportunities to meet with city staff on this topic in small group meetings. So Ken, we're going to return the floor to you for 2 minutes. Thank you very much for staying.
Well, thank you very much. I truly appreciate it. It's a very wonky accounting kind of question. So
my favorite kind.
Yeah. So the information on the web said there's $26 million worth of projects to do. $6 million is budgeted and we need 20 in order to do the rest. So my question is, what happens to the $6 million that would presumably be in the 2023 budget in the out years? Would that continue to be available? I presume it would. So that was my question.
Thank you. Kurt?
Yeah, so yes, the $800,000 a year that the city council set aside for that would continue in perpetuity. So, but what we're trying to show here is that we need far more than that. But yes, that's an ongoing. I mean, future councils could obviously make different decisions about budget items, but that would be the intent, is that that amount of money carries forward every year after that.
And it is a significant annual investment we make right now.
Yeah, thank you very much. And that makes sense.
Thank you, Ken. So thank you. And thank you everybody for the excellent questions and comments and insight. David, if you don't mind just taking folks through how they can get engaged in the budget process generally, that would be super helpful.
Sure, Jim. Yeah, I would direct everyone to visit the city webpage. You can go to, and I have my screen shared here, kirklandwa.gov/budget. And you can also search for the budget if you just go to the main homepage. And this landing page will give you all the information about upcoming dates, ways to contact the council and staff, just to give feedback about what matters most to you. I would draw everyone in attendance, draw attention to this blue button. It says go to Balancing Act. And so we have created a simulation, a sort of budget game that folks can actually tell us, our community members can give feedback to staff, which will then be packaged and delivered to council about what priorities matter most using a simulated budget. And so we're really asking people to dive in here, and it's a way to increase or decrease specific areas of the budget in order to fund things or to not fund things, depending on what matters most to each community member. And so that's kind of the quick overview of ways to get involved in the budget process, starting with tomorrow's revenue public hearing. So.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And particularly appropriate, I think, because several questions came tonight about both the opportunities and challenges inside the existing budget and the difficult choices that the council needs to make with existing revenues, and how and why dedicated resources like a car tab would be beneficial to the city. Gives you a bigger perspective of the difficult choices that we have to make. So thank you, David. I would like to say, before I return it to you, Madam Mayor, that if folks do go to the Transportation Benefit District website, you will see October 12th and October 20th are 2 dates that we have designated for smaller group discussion. Please bring the same kind of robust questions to those meetings, and we'll have smaller groups is where we can dive into the details with a little bit more time. So we welcome your participation in that. And once again, please jump in right to the website for all the information about the Transportation Benefit District. It could help you a lot as we move through this budget cycle, communicating with the council. You can communicate with us through text or contact the council directly through kirklandwa.gov/council. So with that, with a lot of gratitude, thank you everybody for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. And thank you so much for the council for making the time tonight to listen, and for our city manager and our expert panel and staff for being here tonight. Thank you all. And with that, Madam Mayor, I return it to you. I'm muted.
Sorry about that. Had to happen, right? Thank you, Jim, and thank you to our expert panel. And just following up on David's comments about the budget game, I played it this weekend. It's a very frustrating task when you recognize the way that costs are going up parallel to the needs that we have in the city. But it's a very interesting exercise. And I think it's very illustrative of what we're going to be trying to do over the next couple months. But most of all tonight, I want to say thank you to the community that joined us for tonight's meeting. Please take us up on our offer to continue engaging with the city on this topic. Jim has provided information on how to do so during tonight's meeting, which is also available on the city's website. So thanks to you all, and have a good evening.